It starts with a medical mystery, something that has been baffling parents and researchers for decades.
Yeah, it's called the fever effect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have a child with severe autism who, spikes a high fever, and all of a sudden, the behavioral clouds just part.
They become calmer, more verbal, more connected. It's a heartbreaking but incredibly fascinating phenomenon.
For a long time, it was just anecdotal, right?
Right.
But looking at this stack of research we have from Johns Hopkins, Harvard, we now understand the mechanism.
Right. The fever triggers something called a heat shock response, which is basically a cell defense mode. So the big question for researchers became, can you trigger that protective benefit without the fever?
And that is the whole mission of this deep dive. We're exploring the chemical answer to that question, which is a compound called sulforaphane.
Okay, but before we get into the chemistry of, sprouts, we absolutely have to drop a heavy disclaimer here.
Yes.
We are not medical professionals. We are not doctors. We're analyzing research on inflammation and synaptic dysfunction. This is for informational purposes only.
Exactly. We are decoding the data, not writing prescriptions. So let's get into the source of this compound. Why are all these studies obsessed with 3-day-old broccoli sprouts?
Right. Why not just a regular stalk of broccoli?
Yeah, why can't I just eat that and get the same effect?
Well, you could, but the math is just, it's really against you. The research shows this massive potency gap.
Okay.
The magic compound isn't actually sulforaphane itself. It starts as a precursor called glucoraphanin. And the data shows that these little 3-day-old sprouts have 10 to 100 times more of it than the mature plant.
Wow, okay, so it's the difference between like a double shot of espresso and a sip of really weak tea.
That's a great way to put it. To get the same benefit from mature broccoli, you'd have to eat an impossible amount.
I see.
And once your body converts that precursor into sulforaphane, it crosses the blood-brain barrier. It calms down oxidative stress, and crucially, it dampens the TOR signaling pathway.
And that's a pathway that tends to be hyperactive in autism, right?
Exactly. Now, this brings us to the most practical and probably frustrating part of this for a lot of people, the supplements.
The pills. I mean, looking at the market analysis in our notes, it seems like most broccoli pills are just a waste of money.
They often are.
Yeah.
It really comes down to a chemistry problem. Remember, the plant has the precursor, glucoraphanin.
Right.
To turn it into the active medicine, sulforaphane, it needs to mix with an enzyme called myrosinase. And in the plant cells, these two things are stored in totally separate compartments.
That reminds me of a glow stick. You have the two chemicals inside, but they're separated by a little glass tube.
Yes.
They don't do anything until you snap the stick, the glass breaks, the chemicals mix, and then you get the light.
That is the perfect analogy. And in so many of these commercial pills, that enzyme, the SNAP, it's either dead or totally unstable.
So you're just swallowing the precursor, but you can't unlock it?
Exactly, which is why the consensus in all our source material is to just use real, fresh sprouts.
But even with fresh sprouts, there's a catch, right? If you just sprinkle them on a salad and swallow them whole, you haven't snapped the stick.
Correct. You have to mechanically break those cell walls. You have to mix the precursor and the enzyme. So you need to chew them very, very thoroughly, like into a paste.
Which is a huge ask, especially if you're trying to give this to a child with sensory issues.
Yeah.
But I found this workaround in the community protocols, the freezer trick.
Oh, yeah. This is definitely the best life hack in the whole pile. When you freeze the sprouts, the water inside the cells expands and it forms these sharp little ice crystals.
And the crystals puncture the cell walls.
From the inside out. So when you defrost them, the chemicals have already mixed. The freezer basically does all the chewing for you.
That's a game changer. It maximizes the bioavailability and gets around the whole texture problem.
It really does.
So let's talk dosage. The numbers in the Johns Hopkins studies were pretty specific.
They were. For a child, or really anyone under 100 pounds, the therapeutic dose was roughly what you get in 1 tablespoon of fresh sprouts per day.
Just 1 tablespoon. That's remarkably low. It feels manageable.
It is. And that single tablespoon has the same potential as about a cup of mature broccoli. For adults over 200 pounds, you'd scale that up to maybe a quarter cup.
But, and this is a critical point from the sources, it has to be broccoli sprouts.
Yes, thank you for emphasizing that. Alfalfa sprouts, bean sprouts, clover sprouts.
Right.
They might look similar, but they do not work for this. They don't have the chemistry.
It has to be broccoli.
And we should probably talk about the taste. Because let's be honest, they don't taste like candy. They're intense, like a concentrated radish, very spicy and sulfurous.
Which is why all the sources suggest hiding them. Mix them into yogurt, a cold soup, or a smoothie. But the one rule that's everywhere: no heat.
No heat, ever. Heat kills that enzyme. If you cook them, you destroy the snap.
You're back to square one. So, the protocol is clear then. Broccoli sprouts only.
Freeze them or chew them really well to activate the chemistry.
Keep them raw. And start with about 1 tablespoon a day for anyone in that lower weight class.
It's a powerful example of food as medicine, but only if you actually respect the chemistry behind it.
So we have a challenge for you. How can you get just 1 tablespoon of broccoli sprouts into your diet, or your loved one's diet, starting tomorrow?
It's a small change that could make a big difference.
Thanks for listening to this deep dive. We'll catch you on the next one.